Welcome, everybody. I am the Lone Star Picker, also known as Lone Star Louie. This is volume 4 of Tease Talk. Tease as in tees, we call them tees, t-shirts and stuff. And also in that direction of the niche of t-shirts, there is a big vintage community. And I am happy tonight to welcome to you. This is Miss Savannah. Yeah, I'm pointing the right way. Savannah, also known as the Vintage Lair or Vintage Lair, not the. I'm the.
Everyone calls me Lair, but my shop is called Vintage Lair Shop.
Okay, so and this is predominantly you're on only Instagram right now.
Instagram, Poshmark, Depop, Grailed, and eBay.
Okay. Oh, in terms, okay, so we're already going there. So you heard it here. She's also on platforms, but I mean, in terms of social media. So yeah, this is a kind of hard one because see, let me give a little leeway, and then we're going to say hi. By the way, hi Tino, thank you for joining us. We got a few more people jumping in. Feel free to make your comments. I'm sorry.
How do I see that?
Oh, I forgot to tell you that you can pop open a window on YouTube, but you don't have your laptop with you, do you? There.
I'm on my laptop.
You should be able to see the comments. Just look in the comment section there, so you'll see that. Hey, so real quick, let me say hi to Tino's reseller, Hollywood reseller. Otnip Draw Flips is actually Ford Pinto spelled backwards. How you doing, buddy? It's good to see you, Miss Regina Michelle. Happy to see you. TK Resells. Oh, cool. She's like, I'm a fan of both of these people. TK Resells. You know who that is? I think they go by different names.
TK. Wait, TK.
Instagram. In Instagram.
I think I know who it is, but I don't
know.
So
real quick, I was going to say something for us, and then I want you to give an introduction in a minute. Hold off, Savannah. So if you guys are not familiar, this is Tease Talk. This is volume 4. Our guest here is Vintage Lair Shop on Instagram. We just did a little quick intro, but basically, those who don't know, she and I have met on Instagram. This is the community, which is a whole different community on YouTube, which does lives all the time, but they do a lot of pre-recorded stuff. So we met there. I don't know. It's been like early this year or something. Maybe it could have been late last year when I think I started seeing you. I don't remember when you came on.
I think I started I discovered the Instagram vintage community, all these lives and stuff, and how we do our auctions and claims in June. So I met you in June.
Okay, so boy, it was already, gosh, what a quick summer then. Yeah, it seemed like longer. Isn't that kind of weird? Like you'll meet certain people and either you connect or vibe, and then, some people you're just, you connect with, but, they're willing to talk if you're willing to give them information or just make the effort. And so you and I, we just talk, I think. So that was our connection. Oh, that's awesome. So real quick, so thank you for everybody dropping in and dropping out. We may only have one viewer. You're like, who is that? And I'm like, do you know that person?
I know another name.
So let me give you a little background. Layer is Tom has a YouTube channel as well. And
what's
that? Yeah.
I drop flips.
Oh, hey, got it. Take care. It's good to see you, Richard. So, Tom and I didn't know this, but we first met on Instagram, and then we did the opposite. One day he was like, "Yeah, I'm on YouTube." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I caught that you were too." And so we started talking. Tom has been on volume, I want to say 2 or 3. I can't remember. I think it was volume 3. So he was the last guest on Tease Talk. And for those of you who don't know, I'm the Lone Star Picker. Tease Talk is about t-shirt talk, and tonight's focus is going to be on the vintage community. That could include t-shirts, but it also can. Well, let's ask our guest here. This is Vintage Lair Shop from Instagram, aka Miss Savannah. I say Miss. She doesn't necessarily request that, but she is our guest, so we give her all respect. How did you get into liking vintage clothing?
Well, you know this.
Kind of a generic, stale question.
Yeah.
Heard it. Good one.
Well, when I was My dad really likes thrifting. So when I wanted to go to the retail shops when I was younger, my dad would bring me to Goodwill, and
Were
I
you a
was
teen or a preteen?
a 7.
So you're a
Um,
preteen. A preteen.
yeah,
Cool.
but then when I got into vintage was because I had to stand at the front of the store, hating life. I wanted to go to Abercrombie. Then I started going through the racks because my dad would be there for a
Hayward's
long
there.
time. So then I started actually being like, "Whoa, you can find Abercrombie in Goodwill, huh?" Um,
And cheaper. You know.
so ever since then, I've been collecting. I still have stuff from when I first started. Yeah, in my preteens, I guess. And
You
yeah,
still
I
have
collect.
some of that stuff?
Yep,
That's
I'm
awesome.
looking at one right now over
Cool.
there.
Do you have an example of it?
Yeah,
Is it on the wall? Oh, you got to get up to get it? No, you don't have to get up right now.
here's
Yeah.
one. No, here's one.
This is one that you collected when your dad would bring you to a thrifting.
Yeah.
This was yours when you were a kid, perhaps?
No, not a kid. I was like 12,
Teenager?
well, yeah, 12, 12, 13.
Okay. Preteen.
Yeah,
So
and
that's
it's handmade. So this
so
was
can you
actually
come in? Can you come in closer with some of the details of the roses just on the sleeve? Yeah,
on the sleeve.
that's freaking awesome. I don't know a lot of kids, Savannah. I don't know a lot of kids that would keep, like I have a daughter that moved out and she pretty much left a lot of her stuff, except of course what was cool, her skateboard, her favorite shirts, her clothes. And it's like, so for you to hold on to that, that's a good memory. I mean, that's also kind of I guess this is where I'm kind of getting into. This is where I like to ask these kind of weird questions, like, did you realize you were kind of falling into this niche that is part of the vintage community that
Kind
was
of because I was well, like me and my friend and I, like we weren't rich growing up, like, and so her and I, we would go back to school shopping at Goodwill, Value Village. I'm in Toronto, by the way, everyone. Canada. I don't know if Louis mentioned that. Um, and so we both wear grandpa sweaters that were awesome to school, and everyone else would make fun of us. We always stuck out like sore thumbs. But so that's when I kind of started realizing I'm like, okay, like I dress differently than other people. I'm
Mhm,
wearing a 70-year-old person's sweater, but it's cool.
mhm. Well, that's just it. Like, for lack of a better word, cool, which fits the what's the vernacular, like all across the board, different generations. You say that's cool, that means like, oh, I got something really, really,
Yeah.
really brisk. But it's funny is like, ironically, you got a dual innuendo. It's cool up in Canada. You need a sweater. You better have that to keep warm. So it's like, but I'm also like kind of, leading up to a kind of a, maybe I'm not making a joke, but I'm trying to think about it like, here you are, you got this stuff, and it's like something that's out of reach, but all of a sudden you like went from, I want Abercrombie, but I don't care about it now. And all of a sudden, because
Yeah.
I guess my point I'm trying to make, you see where I'm getting at, is Abercrombie is a type of fashion. It was marketed by big corporate America. And then all of a sudden we have, like, 30 years ago, there was a group called Nirvana, and the lead
Thanks.
singer,
Thanks, Louis.
no, not you. This is, well, but you don't understand. Like, remember, we're on a live. See, she's not used to this because we're on a live, and on lives, these are pre-recorded. So you're gonna have somebody coming into this that's, hey, I'm from Australia, and they're like 11 going on 12 and going, oh, so it's okay to go. I thought it was weird because I go to thrift shops. You want to
Yeah.
gain the
'Cause our
confidence of.
community, yeah, on Instagram is totally
Well,
different.
and
It's
that's
like,
just it,
I don't know
because
her shop.
you say our community, but like, how many sub communities have we found since we've been there?
Probably so many different ones. Communities within communities within communities,
It's
which is
microcosms with a microcosm. So but that's what I'm trying to say is I'm transgressing is like, I can only think 30 years ago because that's when I really got into like my style. And the thing is, I got into it a little late. I wouldn't say that. In high school, I had some weird, quirky things going on with my attire, my what I would wear and stuff like that. But what I'm getting back to is like what you just showed us. You know, you're coming up a thing where it's like, this is okay because it is my style. I'm making this come back to life. It's an inanimate object that you're putting energy and you're investing your interest in, but also you're wearing it and you're taking a risk by wearing it in public because it's maybe something that somebody hasn't seen in 70 years, whatever. It's kind of, so
Yeah.
like it's bizarre when you think about it like that. There isn't really no age. And the reason I brought up Nirvana with Kurt Cobain was he talked about this. He was talking about like, why should I have to go and do the da da da? And he would talk about going to the vintage store, how important it was.
Yeah. Yeah, going to the vintage store and then sorry, go ahead.
No. Actually, you finished because I don't remember. How do you remember kind of what he said, or you put it in your words, whatever?
It was just something like, okay, for example, like in the community that Louis and I know from each other,
Yeah.
it like a parallel to like along the lines of like, I don't care what tag is on the shirt or you know what I mean? Like if it's just like, for example, that knit that I showed you guys, you can clearly tell that it is vintage. It doesn't have a tag, but at the end of the day, my style is all over the place in terms of vintage. I will wear something from the 20s to now, barely now. But if there's a cool dead stock tee, I'll buy it. But
But sometimes you buy it because you're also, which we didn't talk about upon introduction because we didn't really give you a chance to really introduce yourself. But you did say you're from Canada. This Vintage Lair shop is where you can find her on Instagram. I think I put it down here below. You guys can see that all after. But yeah, it is kind of a bizarre thing. Like, where would you say that in that realm of vintage? What is your niche? Your favorite niche?
My favorite?
Yeah. Because I mean, you can have more than one, but like, how about this? Give me a couple of your
decades or like.
So like, I got a couple of niches. Like, like there's certain, I like military kind of attire and jackets because I've seen it actually translate into urban streetwear. I've seen it in the past in punk styles. Like if you go back to late 60s, early 70s, when it was just starting to kind of get away from whatever was going on, the predecessor of music, culture, politics, all of a sudden it was like a post-Vietnam thing. People were wearing, hippies, protesters. There was punk rockers that were wearing like military jackets for different reasons. So mine is like, a stressful perspective. I want to consciously be aware and look at them and say, oh yeah, there's a lineage in history there that's worn, and not just for resistance, like as a punk, history goes, and it is historical. So like I've noticed in our conversations, because you and I met on Instagram, the one thing you and I have in common, we'd like to talk about the history of things. No,
that's exactly what vintage is. It's and that's what I love. Like I don't know if I mentioned, but I'm gonna turn the sound off my phone. If I mentioned that I've worked at like since I actually got into vintage when I was in my preteens. When I was like 15, I started working at I worked at multiple vintage shops, consignment shops, buy, sell, and trade shops. I love working
all in the industry or in the realm of like reselling, but also in clothing,
Yeah. And then I've also been like a brand ambassador for higher end brands. Wouldn't recommend that kind of job. It's not as fun.
Is it the corp? What's that word? I can never say it. Corptocracy. Yeah,
Yeah. No, I work for this company called M0851, and it's a small company. I'm not going to go on a huge story about it. Hi, Prison.
Hey, P2P. That's Prison Profit. That's Dante. And congratulations on your convention, Dante. I got to see it. I was glad you took pictures, and thanks for showing up. And everybody, shout out to everybody that's listening in the chat. I know it's kind of quiet. Anybody has questions, by the way? This is Vintage Lair shop, and there's Westside Gary. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Shout out to Gary. He's actually got an auction coming up. If you want to just to kind of get an idea of what the auction world is like, this is a good example. His name is Gary. He goes by Westside Gary on YouTube, and he sold pretty much everything. I think he's even sold shirts or clothing at stuff. And this is stuff that the reason I'm one reason I wanted you on is like a guest is to kind of give you an opportunity to say, hey, this is who I am. I'm a reseller in this niche and pound. Yeah, he does this thing where he goes. Whoosh. That's funny you did that because that's actually what he does on his his what do you call it, his auctions and stuff. He reaches out and he goes.
Yeah, I do that.
So,
I go.
Everybody's like, whoa. So
wait, can I back for a sec?
Yeah.
My niche, punk when punk was punk and grunge. That's it. But we'll get back to that. So Gary at auctions.
No, I'm just saying he's a great guy. He's done actually Dante is this whole community of YouTube community is kind of this like remember I was talking about microcosms and well in the YouTube world there's so many like there's some cliques that kind of more auction oriented, and then there's some that are more resellers, and then there's some that are more reseller talk, and then there's some that are just it goes on, and then there's just communities where they're all connected.
Sub within sub communities that connect with other
communities. Well, let's go from there and let's talk about something that you and I have in common, and is I don't know. Do you remember how we met? It was on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember what talk it was, but it was. Would you assume it was a live?
I
mean, it had to be, right?
Through Pimp. It's definitely through Pimp. 100%.
So when we say the word pimp, there's an identity. Vintage Pimpage is his name with like some numerics behind it. But anyway, that's an Instagram. Did I say IG? It was Instagram character, and it's a mutual friend of ours. Yeah, you're right. I think it was a live one night. We were and you and I kept cracking up. We were making jokes or something.
Yeah, because that's what Pimpage does. He, he just kind of.
Well, let's not make this about him. This is about you. So
yes, we have late night talks sometimes. That's how I met Louis.
Yeah. So real quick, but the ironic thing is what we're talking about is regardless who it was, I've tried to explain this in YouTube community and some people just give me like dead stares and whatnot, no, and actually you have a question. You have a first question.
Yes. Gary, I do not, but I was talking to Louis prior to this and,
we were talking about like what was your intention for wanting to have a YouTube channel if you had one. So she's thinking about it, I think.
Yeah, I'm less camera shy now because I always go on lives and stuff.
You would definitely have a YouTube personality. Yeah, you would have that.
Well, there's filters on Instagram. I'm kidding.
Not on YouTube.
But I was thinking.
By the way, shout out to Nikki, Love Snacks. How you doing?
When Louis was talking about YouTube, I was like, damn, that could be a way to like, because I have a lot of interests. Like I skate, I do graffiti,
there you go.
I refurbish furniture, I collect a lot of.
And you know what? Let me stop you there real quick, because whatever your other interests amongst your vintage niche of whatever, and you don't have to have one, because it's like saying a reseller, like what is your main focus? Well, I like to do mostly tools or but on YouTube it's a great plethora. It's like it's a plethora of like resellers, but then I'm noticing a lot of resellers will do this. They either start to quit, veer off, or long story short, they'll make their own, like, this is my channel. I'm going to be skateboarding today, and Tuesday I'll be cooking. And the other thing is I'm going to talk about selling, vintage clothing from this perspective or something. Mm-hmm. And you're educating the community.
I love that because it's a lot different than the microcosm that we met in, right? The one that we met in, Louis and I, it's just t-shirts.
Yeah. Mostly there can be some shoes and hats as like accessories.
Grails. and they have to be, rare and expensive if
Right.
you're actually going to do well in that. Like if you're actually doing it as your job, you have to invest a lot of money and a lot of time to get that return back. But with me, yes, I like teas. Like I'm wearing a Marilyn Manson right now. I have
Can
some
you?
up
Is there
here.
an image in the front? Can you stand up for a moment
Yeah,
so they
this
can?
is actually going online for a lot of money, and I think I bought it for $5.
Crazy. Yeah, Marilyn. Can I tell you something? I met a kid yesterday at, and I hate using that word kid, but he was definitely a kid. Um, and I may end up giving him a lot of my art books because it turns out he's an artist nearby. That's great. Guess what he asked for? He was like, "Do you have any Marilyn Manson T-shirts?" And I'm like, hmm, maybe for trade. And then he goes, "Oh, okay." So
Hey, thank you.
thank
Thank
you,
you. I'm
Gary.
just
Appreciate you,
keeping
bro.
all my
Gary
platforms
Friga.
going. I'm a baby when it comes to online stuff. I am literally a ghost when it comes to social media. And now I'm all in it and I'm
Talk
learning and
about that. Like, what do you mean? Like when you say you're baby, like you're a newbie in some respects. I
well,
hate that word.
yeah. So working at a vintage store or a consignment store, you don't necessarily like people don't come in saying, do you have any like this, for example, that nice mustard art shirt.
Hmm.
It's on an Onita tag
Hmm.
and it is single stitched and it has a signature by the artist.
I'm going to act like I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Describe what is the single stitch and how is that important to the vintage world? I mean, I'm laughing because I already
single
know the
stitch
answer.
is popular and double stitch is less popular. So it's more valuable if it's single stitched. And Onita is one of the most bestest tags you can get out there,
You said that
apparently.
with like a Russian. It is this, or let me tell you, Patutnik. So, but you're right. So let's go there because you and I can easily talk in our own vocabulary, and people are going to go clueless. What is that? One time I said single dingle, and nobody knew what I was talking about,
So
and it
this
was on
is a
YouTube,
single dingle. Um,
which means
you
single
got
stitch.
you got
Usually,
the
like
neck,
this is single stitched. Yeah.
yeah, you got the front hit, no back hit on this one. This is how people talk. No
Yeah.
back hit on this one, on an Onita tag. In this year specifically. Oh, and then you got the artist signature. So that basically they don't say this, or we don't say this, but that means it's
Correct.
top quality.
Yeah.
I didn't know that coming in. Like,
What's great about this is age has nothing to do with it. Like I'm noticing Nikki's, comment about you looking young. I don't think it really matters because I've seen older guys wearing new, younger shirts from 2 years ago from a group that they just discovered because. So I don't think it really has a matter like about an age thing. And in
I
saying
have
that,
Morrison tattooed on me in my
see,
old
and so I mean, that's just the beauty of it. Like music is so ephemeral that it transcends time, right? Don't you think, Savannah?
100%.
You know what I'm
100%.
saying? But what I'm also getting at is in this, and I don't like to use strictly vintage, but like in the reseller world that deals with vintage and vintage T-shirts, because it sounds like, and I'm going to get to that question in a minute. Maybe think about it while I'm finishing the statement. I'm going to ask you like, what other types of vintage clothing do you like? But I was going to say is in this vintage game, we call it the game, meaning the hustle or whatever the market. Which, if you're talking business strategies, in the official market of attire and clothing, there's this thing we call vintage, and I've met 12-year-olds on an Instagram live. I mean, that's how serious this gets. People think we're talking cool talking this and that. No, this is serious across the board. I already saw Sotheby's the other day. They're already putting up shirts for auction. What's taken so long for people to realize this is a serious game?
But at the same time, what is vintage? What is this umbrella term now that's considered
Yeah,
vintage? Because,
yeah.
like,
Which I kind of hate. It's not that I hate it. It's a
I hate it.
double-edged sword.
I personally, I hate it. Like a very strong opinion and on I hate it because what is true what is true vintage? It's subjective.
Yeah.
It depends on the community. Like, for
Yeah.
example, the one that we met on, I
Yeah.
had all this stuff from like the 20s to the, late
And that's
90s.
amazing. So like then you can go the opposite direction, like where, and I'm not trying to pick on Nikki Love Snacks, but there is this perspective. And it sometimes it's interesting because it doesn't just come from men, but it can come from women too, which is a critique on society, but it's on a critique on fashion as a whole, which speaks something because here you are, you got a Marilyn Manson shirt on, but you love the 20s. In order to love something, you have to know something about it, right? So like Gary's statement about his son, he said, so true. My two sons, they love vintage clothing. Yeah, they're only 12, 13, whatever, but they get it, you know. So, it's kind of interesting to kind of look at that.
He's 13, did you say? May I, Louis?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I'll be
So she's
right
going to show us something. Let me read. While you're doing that, I'm going to read Tino's comment. Says most of the music out there is also amazing for the stories that they tell, which is interesting because we're wearing something that can exude poetic, or it can exude, some artistic form of message, or as the business world would call it, marketing. You're getting our message out there. You're wearing a Wu-Tang Clan shirt. You're doing, whatever it is. But style will be style. And right now there's a predominance of brands, which I know that I can make a lot of money, and I don't tell every reseller because that's my bread and butter too. And you want that information, you know, become a good business friend with me. Maybe we can talk, and it's always about sharing. So what were you going to show us?
Well, I think a 13-year-old would really like this. This is what I'm getting into, not like for me to wear, but
Love
classical
that.
music and opera. I grew up in the Conservatory of Music. I did
And didn't
vocal
you
and
say
dance.
one time is it okay to say, didn't you know somebody or a family member that
My
was
mom is an opera singer.
okay?
She was
I just wanted
Carmen.
to let you say. Yeah. Nikki,
She
I'm
was
not sure
Carmen.
what you mean
And
by
Carmen.
that.
Yeah, she was Carmen and Carmen in Toronto way back.
Wow. That's pretty
Um,
big.
so I grew up. My mom was a single mom, piano teacher, and
But you had art and culture in your life, no matter whether you're in Canada or Mexico or, whatever, other parts of the world, Europe or Australia or China, it's like everybody has a form of culture that they can exude off of. Somebody in the street may look at you and go, oh, who's this unclassy girl, showing her tattoos. Like I've been, you know what I mean? They'll look at you and go, but yet you have a balance of artistic integrity, you know, um, you love your history because I've talked to you and you can carry on a good, fun conversation and keep up with the best of them. And I say it like that because this is not a series that's, of resellers that gravitates to a certain demographic is what I'm going to say. And I'll leave it at that. But
yeah,
yeah. So, so talk about your influences of art and culture and how did it influence you? Or did you have something you want to share for Gary real quick?
13. Does he like Jordan? Air Jordan? This is early 2000s. So what I'm getting into, because is I'm going to be selling kids and youth clothing. So I'm just getting this started up, but you can find awesome kids stuff at when you go to thrifting. They call it the bins in the States, but we don't have bins. But this is the back. It's a hoodie. It's got the tag.
Well, you said something while you're showing that. So what Savannah's doing is this is Vintage Lair Shop on Instagram. You guys, if you don't know her, please follow her. She brought up an interesting point. So one is she's sharing her knowledge. She's showing you this is what we do in the community. Like, hey, I have this, and believe it or not, you may look at that shirt and say that shirt sucks. I have no interest in it. That's okay. Every category, whether it's category by subject matter, category by branding, whether it's Nike or whatever, things like that, or quality of shirt, or I love the example you gave a little while ago. which was like we have different tags, and then think about it through a lineage of time frame by decade.
And
It's just
colors
amazing.
of those tags for
Or yeah,
decades.
whatever the symbols. Yeah, like I've shown 1970s tags that are Hanes. They're so tiny, and by the 80s they got a little bit stronger and bigger because they were wearing out quicker. And there's so much interesting history of that. But you said something a little while ago about kids and this and that. They're not only getting into the game, but I've noticed there was somebody, this one young man, he must have been like 12 to no more than 16. I think he was like 14 or whatever. And he's been on a lot of those Instagram lives with like a lot of adults. And I'm like, this kid's not only brave, he's got a drive and ambition. It doesn't matter if he's got an interest for money, because that's smart at that young age. But he's also like, here, he's doing this. He's like telling you, oh, this is my interest. And so for somebody who is now turning 16 to 18, right? And what's 10 years before that for them? To go 10 years back. And you got all these clothing and like you showed, what was it when you showed the Nike? It's pretty good.
That Air Jordan.
So
That
like
one?
they're looking back for certain items, right? And maybe not that one, but maybe.
Yeah. And then like there's a Wall-E one there, like a jersey, but I have like super cute like Disney stuff from when like way back. And then
Well,
when I
I
was
mean, be more specific, because like we got a bunch of viewers that may not know about vintage. So when you say way back, like a decade longer or what?
California Raisins.
Mm-hmm.
California Raisins, 60s, 70s.
No, actually, they were more 80s, I think. The
I mean, Grapevine came out in the 60s.
Well, that was the song though. But the California Raisins was a branding that, so because I grew up in Central California, a lot of fruit farmers and stuff like that. And hey, how you doing, Luis? Good to see you, man. And that's
I did thrift all of them. I don't know the last time that I haven't thrifted something. Like,
well, let's bring this conversation, because we're coming up to like well over 40 minutes. We can talk all night about this stuff. But I wanted to bring a couple questions up to like, you're a reseller. You consider yourself a reseller indirectly, but you sell stuff, whether you auction it or not. Like you've been on, I've seen your auctions. I've seen you sell private deals, like on your stories or whatever. Hey, this is for sale or whatever. You've sold stuff, and you and I have talked about bartering, which is trading.
I'm also a buyer for a couple of shops in Toronto.
Okay.
And I'm also the seller of some of the items.
Hey, Joey, how you doing? Jody Butter being in the house too. If you guys don't know him, follow him. He's on YouTube. TK Resales is back. He's like, Tagger, we're going to get there. Give me a minute. Give me a moment. No, wait. Let's hold that a second. I wanted to bring up something. So you're in this community. So whether you consider yourself a reseller or not, we sell. Basically, we sell and trade. My motto is buy, sell, trade.
That's what's
and it's funny. I've been using that for a while, and then all of a sudden, I noticed in the t-shirt community, they've already been, people have either saw and borrowed from each other, or they're just using, and they're a lot younger than me. So I'm like, it is about that, because sometimes what I get for a nickel, and I trade it for, because you got a shirt I want, and I know that shirt's $200, and you're like, I need to have yours. Yours is only 175. Yeah, I'll give you an extra 25.
Mom and I are doing a trade.
Right.
Exactly what
but
you said.
There's inherent value, and that was just started from the very little, and so you can kind of go up from there. But let me get this. We're in a market. Would you say? So you and I have known each other long enough. So like, we've talked about like a lot of different things in different categories about the vintage world. This is kind of indirectly related to anybody who's a reseller, but like, in the vintage world that we see, and we're mostly on Instagram, would you say there's enough, I guess, how am I going to put this? Is there enough female resellers in the vintage, world? Or
no.
What was the word in the vintage game?
In the game, no, there isn't, and I think the reason why I do fit into that community, or how do I put this? Okay, my thing in that community
Mm-hmm.
is, well, in everything, I wear the stuff that I like and I buy
Yeah.
the stuff that I like. So I wear everything that I sell, meaning I'm a tomboy. Like I'm a skater chick. I wear men's large and extra large shirts, whether I tuck it in,
But you're
leave
wearing
it
it, and you're wearing it as a female
or
because
a
that's
dress
who you are,
or a
but
dress.
you're
So
also,
that's yeah. So that's what I was trying to bring to my like niche, like that like women can look hot in, like a men's XL shirt, as a dress or something like that. But
Mhm.
there's
Or at
like
least you can define fashion. Let me put it in a different way, because I don't want to make this about a sexism thing, you know. But the question always begs to be asked when I like to talk about, and I like to put stuff out there so that people kind of, but I guess when it comes to marketing, it's already out there. So we have enough of Fredericks of Hollywood. What's funny is I just found a vintage one from the 80s or 90s, and there's Victoria's Secret and this and that and da, da, da. But women's fashion is not defined by, I'm going to go to Walmart and this is the only size you got of this and this and this, or whatever, by what we call fast fashion. If nobody knows what that means, look it up on Wikipedia. We'll have another talk on that. But which means multiples and multiples. But I think some of the whole idea, and somebody's going to go, you're a tree hugger because you're into vintage, because it's a little more sustainable because we can repurpose it.
bandwagoning.
What's that? Oh yeah, Ben. Yeah.
Bandwagoning is a huge part of the community that we're in. So
Talk about it.
let's say Kanye West wears an Aaliyah t-shirt.
Yeah.
Like,
Let's just
right
say word.
there behind me. So Aaliyah died in a plane crash 20 years ago. She was a female musician. Let's say Kanye wore that outside and he's got a picture taken of it. Our community would blow up with
Yeah.
Aaliyah.
And it's interesting because I notice there's a lot of people that are, I wouldn't say they feel responsible, but they're definitely, you can't say they're responsible, but they're very conscious minded. They're watching the news. They're watching, I don't care if it's TMZ, but they read the paper, or they'll just do what they do is they follow Google Trends. Well, the latest trend is Kanye West screams at wife, but all of a sudden you look at that and he's got this shirt on, and then like you said, it's like,
I
oh my
wore
God,
in my other room.
he's Kanye West was wearing a Taylor Swift shirt. I got to get in. All of a sudden, it's like, but see, I come from a lot of resellers that are, eBayers and whatnot, and I want to say I've gotten bored to death talking about some of the same old trends that are on eBay. And there's a lot of, and I'm not talking about them because I'm definitely still part of that community in the sense that I do it, but my main focus in terms of niches is vintage and shirts, and I noticed that brings me a lot more joy and happiness. It's something I know a little bit more about. It's like, to me, it reminds me of ephemera. It's here today, gone tomorrow. We've seen what ratty shirts look like. We haven't talked about dry rot. We haven't talked about a lot of other things, so many different standards and different categories we can talk about within that context.
Can I bring in an example of one of my
Yeah.
favorite shirts?
Oh God.
Right
Don't
there.
tell me it's dry rot. It's better not be dry rot.
Dry rot, but it looks like it.
Oh, okay. Oh, so what would you call this shirt? Are we going to show an example of something? Yes.
Yes.
Would you call it distressing in terms of our vocabulary?
More than so. More than
What
so.
makes this stand out compared to other shirts? So talk about it like you're describing it on an auction.
Okay. So everyone, this is a rat shirt. And it is a single dingle. Lots of holes all over the place. Some people really like distressed clothing. This I would consider very much so distressed. See
And
that?
that is when we talk about fading, look at the grayness compared to a brand new shirt that is like, still has the ink, on it that makes it richly black and blue, like you see a lot, depending on if it has more cotton fibers versus if it has more polyester. Because I just learned something the other day upon, like, somebody was doing chemicals on a shirt just to get it to look like it's gray like that. So because they wanted to make it look old, but they messed the shirt up and they didn't realize it had polyester in it, which makes it look more bluish or kind of more, you mean like ashy gray, This is
Yeah.
great. This is
So
an original.
yeah, this is my favorite shirt.
Did I
Um,
did I say, hey, can I ask you a quick question?
yeah.
Did you see my message in the DMs, which means, direct message, or on Instagram? I wrote, I actually had a picture of me wearing that shirt, or it was that same era. And
No, you
it's on
didn't.
my Instagram page. I have,
Oh,
and it was so funny. I had hair on my head. I had this shirt, and you would go, "Who is that guy? That's not Louis." And it's like it was in Europe, like looking out some like castle window, and I don't remember. I don't even remember it going. Somebody goes, "Do you want me to take a picture of you?" And I don't. All I remember was back in 1990 or 91. I had that shirt on.
look
Crazy.
at this.
That's
Um,
so. That is distressing, ladies and gentlemen. Describe it.
um, so dry rot, but there is a question, or a statement.
Who is it?
I'm here to pick up tips for when I start my own store.
Yeah. Oh,
So
cool.
that's kind of
Oh,
what we're
cool.
talking about here. Like, the knowledge base that you need to have is it was that old that Louis had hair.
She said
um,
it.
so yeah, this is 1989 before I was an idea yet. Guys, I'm 27, born in 94. But so a lot of people, if I showed this, and I have shown it, and I'm like, this is my favorite, and people are like, oh, that's dry rot. There's something called a dry rot test. So this is the bottom of it. Basically, a dry rot tee, if you can take 2 fingers with minimal force,
Give him the preference of where you should check it.
the
You know,
preference, we should check it always on the, yeah,
inside of the hem of the
yeah,
waist.
inside
Yeah,
of the hem. So here's the
because it's
inside.
folded over, right?
Yeah. So I'm doing a live dry rot test.
Don't pull it that hard. It's old.
So
But
it's,
another thing, Chris from 1980s Vintage or whatever his name is, he's the big name on Instagram. But he
yeah,
did this thing where it's like if this is the outside of the shirt, when he went underneath it, the hem's right there, the first row. My finger. He said to use your two, and I've done it always like this. You use your 2 fingernails if you can, like if you got long enough fingernails. So
and
yeah.
just, yeah. So that's a disappointing thing when you receive one of those in the mail.
So going back to the questions of
And then on a
I would
Hanes,
say, go ahead.
on a Hanes
Is that a
heavy,
beefy tag?
no, Hanes, Hanes 100% cotton. Okay.
Yeah, because beefy tags came more in the late 80s, early 90s, I think.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing is how imperative is it to, I mean, I'm kind of asking like very universal I should say more elementary questions of it, but universal that we should all be aware that if you're into like whatever game or whatever it is you're doing. So like, but for us, how imperative is it to know our tags?
To me, just for
Or
the
yeah,
purpose
or
of
for a
selling,
community and for you. Yeah.
for me,
Well,
if
but if I said for you, that just depends on your level of knowledge and how long you've been in this community because we're always learning, right? We're always learning. But for the vintage community as a whole, how imperative, I'm just saying this so that somebody is coming in
yeah,
to watch this and says, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. Is this about vintage t-shirts right now? So how imperative, like how important is it to know what your tags are across the board?
across the board, if it has
Yeah.
a tag, like
Yeah.
I'm
Good
talking
point.
about, see, like you see like 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s stuff. If it has a tag on it, it just has a white, like faded out
Well,
thing that might say lot something on it.
we call
But
those bleach tags, but whether they were actually bleached or just worn out,
yeah,
yeah. But it
so
goes back. It's indicative of what you were saying. It's like I love history. Well, then how else do you know about a product, what you're selling or
because
collecting?
people
For
love
us as
me,
historians, yeah, because you're
like,
pretty knowledgeable about your stuff. That I've listened to you, in past
like,
talk. Okay. Tell us about this.
what decade do you think that this is from? This is a shawl. It's gonna look funny over
You know
my,
what's sad is you showed me that the other day and you asked me and I was totally wrong on the decade.
yep. Oh, and it has the I got this in New York City, in Alphabet City, with it in Manhattan. and it has the
I'm going to
little
guess again, and I'm probably either getting it right because I subconsciously memorized it, or I'm going to forget. And then I want to go to Tom's question that he had earlier.
Okay.
That was that like, what is that? Is that either from the 70s or the 30s? I can't remember.
Late 20s.
Okay, so it was on the other end of the
Yeah.
pendulum. So it's closer
Yeah.
to the 20s.
Yeah.
Oh, I did say 20s last time, and I was something like I was like about 10 years off. But
Yeah.
yeah, who
So
wears that anyway? Like nobody wears there's a certain term for that, but I find them all the time, the ones from the 60s. And you could tell it's 60s because it's more what we call, remember the word we were talking about? Mod. Very mod, you know. Which is funny because mod is like a demeanor, but it was very more forward fashion. When I say forward fashion, it's not the stuffiness you would get from the 40s or the 50s. But the thing is that they're still wearing the same attire. So like I could see what was her name? Kennedy's wife, who Jackie Onassis, who was, and she is like, wouldn't you say, let me ask you this, wouldn't you say she is like a role model of perfect fashions and different of an era?
definitely a legend, yes. Very much so.
Let me ask you this. So
she influenced an era, if that makes sense.
No, I think I'm listening to what and I'm thinking about it.
To what is happening now, which has happened before. When I said bandwagoning, it's that they see that person wearing this, therefore.
So like as far as like YouTubers go, she was sort of like the first version of influencer, if you will.
I guess so. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And here's another thing. When you asked that question, I couldn't help but recognize. I remember watching a documentary about that, and they were talking about she was so ahead of her time that she was actually very tired of the attire that all previous the first wives of the president, you know, the first women, first lady. That's the word. Yeah, we were both off. So, but first ladies, and she really brought that. She brought attention that was like nobody wore anything she wore. She was showing more shin, you know, below the knee, but the style of her pumps, her you know, whatever. And then like when she go to a summer thing, you never saw her wearing t-shirts or anything like that. She was higher fashion. But, you know, what do you think she would say today about what's going on with the fashion? Because you know, she moved to New York and she was still prominent in the fashion world back then in the 70s.
I think she would say today.
Yeah.
I think she would question what the heck is going on.
I was gonna, you know what, the word I was gonna use instead of like what the hell is going on or what the heck's going on is like she'd question the integrity, right?
Yeah, because it's like one of those words that is just so overused and overused and overused. At the end of the day, if you have a mind where you actually critically analyze stuff and you don't just throw out words without meaning, like, okay, something looks old. Does that mean it's vintage? Does this look like a vintage hat to you? Yes, it does.
Well, we don't, you know, but to the unknown eye, somebody either beginning and recent. That's why I said this video may be watched by somebody, you know, 2 months, 2 years, whatever, you know, 2 weeks from now. And they're gonna go, I don't know, it could be vintage. But then again, like if you're a baseball aficionado, you'll look at this and say, no, that logo is different. They didn't start using that color brown.
But you see the heather. Okay, this is another thing. Heather.
Well, just description.
I used to call it salt and pepper looking shirt. But this is a heather blue. Okay, so it means it kind of it has like white and blue. It's not just so for people that they look like they think that that's vintage. This is 2019.
Yeah.
So you don't.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I got a buddy that's in Houston, and we have something in common. You should follow him. His name is Una Luna Vintage, but he sells all kinds of stuff. Like he sells video games, skateboarding stuff, whatever, pop culture things. He loves his shirts, but he's an Houston Astros baseball fan, and he had this really neat chart one day that was up on his Instagram. I think it was him or in his stories, and it showed from the very beginning when the Astros started what their uniforms changed. So like in the 90s, they had like a gold one with this, and the edging was different, and all of a sudden, by the time it became Y2K, you'd see the subtle changes, which helped me because I find that stuff a lot being in the state of Texas. And what's the next to vintage t-shirts, hats, and shoes, what's the next popular thing is streetwear, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I said Y2K, streetwear.
Yeah. Did you have anything you want to show us that's up on the wall, or
Sure.
anything you want
to? So this is
not necessarily to go in the description to show like what's, you can go ahead.
I'll bring it in. So this is the kind of stuff that sells in our microcosm, Louis and I's. Okay. I'll just give an example. This is
I like the t-shirt world. Either you get it or you don't.
Everything.
Yeah.
Well, not everything, but I mean any decade. If it has a tag, if it doesn't, like this doesn't have a tag. You know what I did? I Google Lensed it. You can take pictures of it. This shirt is going online for $500 apparently.
Yeah. It's just if you know, you know, and if you don't know, you don't know. So
this is all right. I'm wearing pants, shorts. Okay.
He's gonna fall down. I know it.
Some options here, and I chose different ones because I thought you might do this to me, and I'm happy to share.
And I did. Well, now we're at the stage of the show. We're talking with Share and Tell, and shout out to everybody in the chat. Just want to say hello. If you guys got questions and things, and I want to ask you a question real quick. Tom asked it. Poor Tom is probably not listening, but Tom, if you're still there, write something because the chat's been. Yeah, Tom Carlike, he's a buddy of ours. He was, and if you haven't watched Tease Talk before, this is volume 4. He was in volume 3. If you guys want to know, but real quick, Tom asks, is it more important to have a better tag, like a vintage tag that's really popular, or a good tag? When I say good tag, a good tag that makes good shirts that were vintage, or would you say it's better to have a great image on a shirt?
For me,
regardless of tag, yeah.
For me, it's the graphic, because the thing that is with these, okay, so a bootleg dead stock, if people don't know, it's bringing back, like, for example, a Kiss shirt from whatever decade, that specific graphic for maybe a specific tour. They take that graphic and they put it on brand new shirts so that people can have, it's more of a nostalgia thing, but people are considering it vintage, but it's not. If I buy any of those, it's because of the nostalgia factor, like the graphic. I don't care if it has a tag on it, but I know it's not going to last long, and it doesn't mean that much to me, but it's kind of cool that I have like that shirt where I don't have to spend $1 million on
so that's your perspective on it. So that's fair. I mean, I get it. There's times where I have shirts that I'm like, I'd rather have a banger of a shirt like this one. Where's the one right behind my head here?
By the way, these ones.
And what's that?
All of these ones are bangers.
So I got this merely based on, and I wasn't going to let it go from the racks. I found this on the racks on a travel. I went, and I didn't even know who it was, but I went, this is phenomenal. And I looked it up, and it's a modern day shirt, but it's got such a crazy graphic that if I wore this and I had the right kicks and I was, out at a party, hanging out in the backyard with the good friends, they're going to be like, what the hell is that about? Because I like, so one of my niches would be like obscurity and this and that and but also things that are culturally relevant to pop culture, so that kind of speaks to what like Tom was asking, which is why I asked you the question. What, would you have a banging shirt? This doesn't even have a tag. It's a printed tag, but it's a marketed one, and it's I guess. And so when you said I'd rather have an image, it makes me think, well, then there's a lot of I'm not gonna there's a lot of production of shirts now that are we call in the vintage community, and it's not even, that's an ironic thing, it's not even vintage. There are vintage bootlegs, but would you rather have a bootleg that has like this crazy all over image? I'd rather have a vintage bootleg than I would like a modern day one, but that doesn't go to say that those aren't worth more.
Oh, wait, okay, a vintage bootleg.
versus just like a bootleg. Because like, so because you were saying images, like versus like having a better, a better tag, which means quality shirt, and sometimes that's the provenance you need to like historically go, this is a really old shirt, and by the way, this is proof it is on the Onita tag, because that's the only company that produced these, Nirvanas or whatever, or
What if you can't
whatever.
afford it? That's what I'm talking about. Like,
Well, that's just one aspect of it. There's people that, they'll figure how to get it, or they stumble on it and find it, and it still
the
becomes their
example of the
preference.
shirt, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
because we all have shirts. Let's talk about this. We haven't talked about. We all have clothing we're never going to give up. I have stuff that my dad gave me. I'm not going to give up. It's nostalgic. But then we have stuff from the social norm that we just love culturally. Like I love this comedian. I love this band. I love. So what examples do you have, and why did you get them?
Okay. I got this solely, and I don't usually do this at all. I think this is the only one that I've actually bought, and that's why I brought it out, that I bought for the sole purpose of resale. This is a 2001 Suki Akira, a manga, anime manga shirt, and it's for a series of noir anime.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
For
on
those
a
who don't know, there is some really unique, rare 80s and 90s Japanime or manga like characters that
hentai.
are on t-shirts. And how high have you seen them go?
6K, 7K, 8K.
$6,000-$7,000 if you could find the right one.
I watched, if you guys go on Instagram, if you have Instagram, follow Final Flame Vintage. He's the host. And I saw last week a guy in Thailand, or no, he was in Japan, sorry. He made over $10,000 in an hour, 3 t-shirts.
Yeah, it's
It's
crazy.
crazy. But
Well, but
this
that's just it. It's not crazy. We say crazy, we like that's awesome, but it's phenomenal to think that, well, here's the thing. We don't know how hard that person worked to find that, and they find it so the other people don't have to, which means if you want it, you got to pay up. That's supply and demand. We all do that as resellers. But in the t-shirt world, there was a guy that I was sourcing next to the other day, and if he ever comes across us, he'll know who he is, and shout out to him. But he was getting really flustered, and I'm like, "What's your problem?" And he's like, I'm like, "Come here, let's go." So he and I walked outside, and we were gonna smoke a cigarette or something, and then I was like, "Oh, I don't have cigs," and he's like, "Okay, let's just go back in." I'm like, "Okay, but listen, just chill out, get in a better frame of mind, maintain your focus, and elevate." And he's like, "You're right." Soon as he went in there, he found a $300 shirt. I mean, boom. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, you
that's
told me about this, I remember, yeah.
and I was right next to him when he found it. And he pulls it, and it was like a Y2K Zelda, but it was like a big weird a hit I've never seen. It was one
I
of the
saw it
characters.
and I was jealous.
Mhm.
I've found
And he sold it in like the
crazy
same day.
armor.
He sold it the same day.
Yeah, I bet.
I'm sorry,
Like
go ahead.
I found an F1 Ferrari jacket, like from Las Vegas, or sorry, Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked it up online and I was like, holy cow. This was me not soberly walking around my intersection like 5 years ago,
Okay.
snowing, and there was a
Shout
mound
out
of
to everybody in the
snow.
chat.
There was a mound of snow over top of an electricity box, and I was like, "Why is that there?" And I pulled it out, and it was this extra large men's F1 Ferrari jacket that I sold for $500.
And
That
you
I
found it
wore.
on the street
I found it on top. Yes, like beside a street pole, light
in the
pole.
middle of the snowstorm.
Yeah,
Crazy.
and but yeah,
Yeah,
so
J Mac. Exactly. Shout out to J Mac here. Look what he says. about your story.
Score. Yeah, it was. It was. I didn't think so at the time. I was like, oh, this is comfy. This looks cool. Blah blah blah. And then one day I was just,
So I'm going to
yeah.
mention something I know you know. Okay, Savannah, I know you know.
I just finished
But
with the shirt. Sorry.
oh yeah,
A lot
yeah, finish that. I was gonna.
Yeah, a lot of anime, especially like manga, don't have
Oh,
back
that
hits.
show the back hit again. I didn't see
Yeah,
that
it
back hit.
usually doesn't have back hits. So this is actually a promo tee for in uh sorry, what is it? Yeah, ADV films. So I know ADV films, so it's not that I do still stick to my mantra. I know ADV films because I do watch anime series. So this
Okay.
is a promo for ADV films anime series, and you got
Which, if
that's
you
30.
don't know that what she's talking about, it's a kind of a distribution
Yeah,
uh
right here.
for yeah, which is a rare niche. So here you got a niche in terms of subject matter that is the niche on shirts, and of course, people who watch that can walk around not with their manga books or don't have a geeky friend to talk to. It can be a which is great about fashion is like, oh yeah, I love Tupac. Oh, I love that Akira character. I love, you know, Marilyn Manson. Where'd you get your shirt? You know, and it's like if you're an old head, as we call it, you know, the people that love shirts, that you could be young as you can be and old as you want, you know, but if you know your knowledge, oh, this, you know, it opens up an opportunity of networking, wouldn't you say?
It can and it cannot. I got kicked off of Pimpage Live for I'm like, okay, guys, just letting you know that these
His
are
name is Justin, and there's a YouTube video of him on here.
screen prints tees, and I didn't even pull them up past here, and I got booted off of the video because some people just
Yeah,
don't.
this is the underground world. Actually, I like that better than the bubbles, but this is the underground world we call Instagram. And if you don't know, you don't know. Here, we got a question for you by Jay Solis. Shout out to Jay Solis, and thank you, Jay Mack, earlier, and everybody else in the chat here. Jay Solis says, what does Lair think of Depop, which is a platform like eBay? How are some sellers, or maybe I think they mean like, how do some sellers unload reprints for, you know, like they go to, I think I know what they're asking. Somebody was talking about this in a coffee talk, t-shirt
Like
talk
that
this
it's
morning.
cheap.
And that is, they'll go to Walmart and basically buy like a $12 shirt or less, or get it on sale, and then they go Depop in their. So go ahead.
So, on Depop, just generally across the
Whatever
internet,
panel.
like
Yeah.
just like generally, like Grilled, Depop, it there. Okay, so
Okay.
if you have ever heard of AliExpress, Top Hatter, these are major Asian like corporations.
Mm-hmm.
They can mass produce the exact same shirt, and
Yep.
you can even request on AliExpress to have it look distressed, like to have it look vintage. So they will put wear into it and stuff like that. And it's 35 cents. I found one the other day. I go on AliExpress because I wanted a nail filer thing for like a cent.
Of course, you got to wait for shipping, and that could be 3 to 7 weeks, whatever.
I got mine in a week.
That's
And I was like,
awesome.
why don't I just start? No, I'm kidding. Why don't I just start getting all my teas from here that look the exact same and then resell it?
Isn't that
No.
funny how that works? I mean, that's just it. We're living more in a global world. So,
Yeah.
you know, the questions that I'm asking you may seem trivial. They may seem elementary to like somebody who's like, oh, what they're talking about in the teacher world doesn't really apply. Well, you know, it does. It just may not on their level, you know. Um, I won't consider myself an expert, but I've been around long enough, and I realized, like, when you brought that rat shirt, I was like, I've been actually in to t-shirts, you know, longer than a lot of the guys that started in this game. But not that I'm better, because some of them really have some bang bangs. I don't know how the hell they acquire them, you know.
I
And that's
don't
the thing, is
I always
that
ask,
knowledge is
plug.
power, right?
I always go, who's your plug? Like, who
Yeah.
is your hookup, you know? Or,
You know.
yeah, you just got a lot of money, honey. I don't
But,
know.
that's, you know what I noticed, that there is a kind of snobbery like that in the reseller world. I don't care, like, whether there's other resell, and I meet a plethora of resellers, like at the places that I source, and I don't just source the bins, but and it's once in a while, like there's a cat that I won't say his name, but he's a really good guy. I would invite him on, but he's really shy. But he does Instagram lives all the time. He's on there all the time. And he's like a town away from me. And the funny thing is we met at Salvation Army. And I remember one day I was like, hey, dude, and he's like, oh, he didn't say much. And I was like, I just was nice to him. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. You want to share Instagram? And then all of a sudden we did. And because I followed him, I was like, I kept getting these live notifications. I'm like, what the hell is it? And I look at it's him, and it's like, so there's that networking I was talking about earlier.
That's how you found out about like the community that we met each other in?
No. But it was actually the opposite. I've been in the community for a while.
Yeah.
Actually been quietly observing for probably like a couple of years before. And I entertained it. But I went on, I have 2 accounts. So everybody has like a burner account and they got a private account. So are you playing with the filters right now?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I was looking at the cut on my hand.
Well, I'm boring here. I'm rambling on as normal. Shout out to everybody in the chat. If you don't know, this is Vintage Lair Shop on Instagram, or just we call her Vintage Lair, or I like to call her Lair.
Well, and I'm just gonna show some of the stuff I have.
Oh yeah. So what about this you were going to show?
This would not sell in the community that Louie and I.
It wouldn't be as favorable. Don't get me wrong, there are some Walt Disney heads. They do ask for
this. It's a women's I haven't looked at this in a while. Extra large.
Is it tailored? Like it's hemmed on the actual sleeves, or did somebody cut it short?
Sorry, no, it's got no, it's
it's a summer shirt, right?
Yeah, summer shirt. Look at all the buttons.
That's awesome. And it's got that good Disney tag too.
Yeah, and you can see like the fade on the sizing too. Like,
wow, we call those bleached sometimes tags.
Yeah.
But the good ones will still have the text on it. And I love those. Probably, I bet you it says made in the USA, right?
Yep. And you got the
provenance down there, little artist signature.
Yep.
You got the well diverse amount of Disney characters, and Mickey's on there twice somehow, unless it's a different Mickey.
I showed this on a live, and someone told me, like in our community, someone told me that layers, everyone calls me Lair in the
Jules.
Hi Jules.
Yeah, but you know what? It could be that one person that disagrees, and maybe they're fault. Hear me out. I'm not saying that there's not a lot of others that kind of go, we're gonna go there to Disney. I want to see more anime shirts, or I want to see rocker shirts. Everybody has their preferences. I get it, but back to what you're saying. So it's like it stresses like there's a division there, right?
Every live that I'm in. And I think it has to do with the lack of, so there's probably about 30 guys, no, 40, 50 guys to one female vendor.
Thank you for addressing it.
So here I showed this, which is.
So they don't want to recognize it.
They don't recognize it. So they say, oh, Lair sells her inventory like a guy gives candy out to kids at a convenience store.
Wow.
I get that every single live.
We'll save story. We're not going to go into story, but the thing is, but the question that I think that comes about of that is not that it's about discrimination, but there definitely is an A influence and a B influence. You know what I'm saying? Where it's a bunch of guys. Nobody's gonna rock a shirt like that unless they're comfortable with their sexuality. And there's a couple guys on there. Do you know? I'm trying to remember his name. Here, let me give you guys an example because we're talking on YouTube, and I know. Shout out to all 6 that are here right now. It keeps fluctuating up and down. May not be a lot of people, but let them rewatch. My thing is there's a very famous guy that helped start the reselling community here. His name was Cincinnati Picker, John. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Hear me out. You know Mojo Cash Threads? They're on our Instagram. They've been on Big Mike's show for a long time in this so hear me out. They're really big names, and you would want to know them because they're kind of skater punk musicians. artists on top of, guess what they sell? Pop culture stuff. They're resellers, but they follow the fashion I call it fashion forward, meaning it's still living. We're doing it. We sell what we like. And they've been on John's YouTube's like, oh my God, forever. And they're just as popular on Instagram. You know what I mean? They have their own channel.
That's why I'm kind of veering away from the community, like the niche of what our community has. It's because like vintage, yes, I love vintage t-shirts. I love, because I grew up listening to all of this stuff, right? Like my family is so musical. Like,
Yeah.
and so
That's
everything
just
from
so we didn't talk about this. There's no collectors too, not just
yeah,
resellers, right?
I'm a
So
collector as well, but that's
yeah,
for
I think
music.
we
And
all
I'm
are at one point, right?
jazz and blues singer now.
Mhm.
I was an opera singer and I swung into jazz and blues and bluegrass. So like I don't know, there's just so many different interests that I have. Like if I would love to own my own shop that had all graffiti walls. That's part of the store where you can make a skate deck, you know. There's obviously clothing, and then there's vinyl and my
And
refurbished
imagine
furniture.
that, like within our own microcosm of like what we call the vintage T-shirt world. Everybody, I've met so many cool artists. I met skater T-shirt sellers. I've met, musicians and this and that. That's why I was just bringing up Mojo Cash Threads as an example. Like he is a perfect example of like somebody who's really well staged in our community, but he's very professional about it. He's also entertains people. Like he's really charismatic, where like people just vibe with him. Like one thing I vibe with him is he plays blues and he plays good. Like one day had nothing to do with T-shirts, and he's on and makes a video playing blues. You know,
Yeah, see, like
and
I'm goofy and stuff. I'm trying to be more.
I think for
I
all of
am
us, our,
me
our
though.
thing is,
I'm always me. So
but that goes to say is like, don't you think that there's so back to the question like about, I don't want to make this about more males in the community or versus females or whatever, but it begs to say all resellers across the board, and specifically what we're talking about, vintage tees, because that's why I call it Tease Talk, because we're talking about T-shirts. We call them tees, and in that tee community, I mean, we all have our own different personalities. So I think for us to say, what you're talking about is to become more comfortable in your skin and
yeah, exactly. Like
to
I would
set
not wear.
boundaries, demand respect, be very professional when it comes to business. We all have the same kind of criteria up here. We all want to make some funds, but how are we doing it?
Yeah, like when I first found the community, I don't know how, but I clicked on this shiny blinking thing and I was like, ooh, shiny. I ended up spending $1,500 on Looney Tunes shirts. And that
What
was
you
US.
mean
I
is she
didn't
was in
know
an auction, didn't realize it,
Looney
started
Tunes
putting
live.
the number,
I
and did
didn't know
what you
this
call,
was a thing on
would you
Instagram.
call that an impulse buy? Hmm.
I was just like, ooh, nostalgia, ooh, shiny. And then I didn't know that you had to like pay right up. I thought there would be like more bidding, and then the bidding ended, and I was like, and then it was like, oh, this layer one. Who is this person?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm 27. Hey, treasures. My name's Savannah. Vintage Lair shop. But
Somebody
yeah.
asked your age? I don't think nobody asked your age, did they?
Hey, friends. Oh, how are you all? I'm
Yeah.
good, and I'm
She needs
27.
old lady glasses. Well,
Yeah.
you heard it here first, you guys.
Um.
I
So
got this brilliant, smart, educated reseller who is in this community with this old dude here. I'm an old head, so hey, but that's great. Like I'm glad that you accidentally did this, because to you that was probably one of the most expensive mistakes you ever did, spending over 1,500 on a shirt.
no,
I'm not saying the only one, but I'm saying is by doing that, you realize, hey, shit, I can get some of that money. How do I sell that?
no. What happened was I talked to those guys. I made communication with all of the people who were selling and we're vendors, resellers off of that live. It was a big Looney Tunes event. Apparently, it was the first one, I don't know of ever, but like this is what they
Yeah.
say. And so there was like 28 guys in there, and then they said that this Lair person is the MVP buyer of the whole Looney Tunes live in general. We're gonna hook this girl up. And I was just like, what? And then I got put into a direct message group with all of these guys who vouched for me to go onto
Yeah.
other people's lives and vouch that
So in a
I'm
way, it became like a networking sales plug that you
yeah.
didn't
So
know.
I was deemed as a professional seller.
You are if they call you MVP, most valuable player. I mean, But
But
be
they had
be
never
honest.
met
Let's
me.
let's talk about something a little bit deeper here. But you're going through this. This is happening fast. It kind of reminds me of the genre of. I'm not comparing you to this, but I'm saying it reminds me of the genre of when the marketing of the years where when supermodels became really, and that's funny thing is all early '90s, which is kind of like what is a popular segment of our vintage culture. A lot of people like the '90s, and it has a lot to do with generation. But by putting like these supermodels, they were going super fast and they had to learn super quick. And what that becomes popularity, but also what that becomes demand and time and boundaries and learning the game in a quick, like you said, you've only been doing this since June. That's pretty fast.
Online and Instagram.
Lives. Yes, that's
Yeah,
okay. I stand corrected. Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, no, it was really quick, and the more followers I got, as we were speaking of gender, the more followers I got and the more views I had on my videos, the more hate I started getting from,
Interesting.
not
Interesting.
like hate, but well, yeah, like blatant, like, statements
I'm trying to
that
think
are
of the term, but I would say, you got, how about this?
bullying
You
to
had
any
haters. You had
yeah,
haters.
haters. I have haters. There's an account called Layers Eyes, and someone took a picture of my eyeball and
It's probably
because
some creepo pervert that's following, but let's not focus the attention on them because it's really not about them. It's about you
yeah,
and how you handle it as a businesswoman in today's
I don't
modern.
care anymore. I don't care.
Good, but that's what I was gonna say. Is at what point do you not, you know what I mean, like not get so caught up in the salt in the wound because I mean it becomes personal, and at one point in business you're gonna run up against you know challenges, and I guess that was my question. I forgot how I was going to ask. We talked about this in the past.
Challenges,
how
yeah.
do you how do you push through some of these challenges, both as being a woman that's in a criteria of a machismo world that is indicative of a lot of controlling features around we're the dudes, we're in control of the money, whatever, or maybe that's not it, or just who's this young dame, and then they start throwing slanderous things that are not.
So you know what helped me get through it? Being me, being real to people
Mhm.
like you, and having respect from, like, you know,
Other big
various,
names in the community, like, yeah.
well, not even just big names, but I just mean like having respect,
Well,
like treated with
for us,
respect, like,
people that we look, when I say big names, I didn't mean like, ooh,
yeah, yeah,
celebrity, let me follow and bow down to you. No, but I mean,
following.
to me, like, I look at Big Mike. Big Mike has been in this community. He just celebrated, and he's been all longer than a year. Big Mike is, if you don't know him, follow Big Mike on
Big Mike's
Instagram. I'm sorry, it's Big Mike's Fire, and I probably will add the link down there later. But if you follow Big Mike's Fire, he's been doing what some people do here on YouTube, but he's been doing on Instagram for well over a year, and he just now celebrated his year anniversary. But he lets people like us, and Lair has been on his show, and
he
he will
comes in
respect.
on my lives.
Yeah.
He comes in on my lives, and I have
How
like,
does that? How does that make you feel? This is a guy that's been. I'm mentioning him because when I say old head, he is an older gentleman, and he's maybe even older than me. Maybe I don't know, or let's just say he's close to my age, and if not, maybe a little older. But he is well respected all the way around, from kids that are teenagers that want to be on his show, and he's done this day in and day out to help people. So how has that inadvertently affected you, like as a
I
new
feel
seller?
honored. I feel honored because, like, it was starting to get to me, and
Mm-hmm.
trust you me, like, my friends have seen. I have a friend here right now.
Mm-hmm.
He has seen how it affected me.
Yeah.
in the beginning,
Really?
but then I looked at it realistically, and I started having real conversations with about vintage and just having mutual respect right off the bat with each other. Like that's how I started talking to Big Mike. That's how I started talking to you. That's how I started talking to,
Because at
like
one point we'll meet up, and let me give an example. Like we'll be doing an auction, and then Instagram, they only allow 4 squares like this. So like I can, and I'm on YouTube, so I can actually invite 2 or more guests, up to, like, unless you pay for a subscription, you get like 6 or 7 people in here, that would
that's
not be correct. That would not be sane in an Instagram world. 4 is enough people that there's a lot of distractions.
manage that.
But that's what I'm saying. But my point was that it takes a lot of integrity, and it takes a lot of order, and it takes a lot of people with good demeanor to take turns, and have a conversation. Like, and I know I talk a lot, but yeah.
Sorry, I was gonna say, especially as the host, again, back to the gender thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I have respect from, I found generally, I'm generalizing here, just from my own personal experiences.
Okay.
I'm now respected in certain lives as as selling things, but when
Good.
I'm hosting my own and people are requesting to come in,
Mm-hmm.
no one is listening to what I'm saying. So like we let other people, all the vendors, take turns, right, to show
So
a
there's
but
basically a formal way of going about it. Yeah. So,
yeah. And so I'll be like, okay guys, that actually Louis gonna go right now, let's let him show his bundle, blah
mm-hmm.
blah. And then people just start talking about, and it
And
just
usually
talks.
only the host would interrupt to say, "Well, okay,
That's
wait,
when
real
Big
quick,
Mike came in. That's when
Lair or Louis, you didn't mention the size." Oh, thanks. Okay, and we're there to support each other and help. But it's in a way that, I'm getting to a point. It's like, remember the old days of, like, when we would all sit in dinner, whether it's your family or you see movies where there's these big dinner, things where people actually formally will, like, have conversation. Don't you think that's a lost art in today's age? With especially
yeah.
after.
Texting, I call people when people pick up their phone and they're like, why did you call me? Why don't you just text?
Mhm.
Because we could have this conversation in 5 minutes rather than 12 hours or two
Yeah.
days from now. I always
Misunderstanding
text,
too.
yeah. And there's context to words, just like there's context to vintage. Like there's context, there's value, there's quality, there's the tone, the hue in a t-shirt, right? Like I think it's just I just had a light bulb moment. It's
About.
just communication. That's
Well,
it.
that's what I'm saying, is because I remember, like, watching some old movies as, a kid. My aunt or uncle would be like, I'm like, what is this crap? But then I would sit there and listen, and, like, some of the best movies you got into is when there was the dinner conversation, because you knew what it was leading up to, whether it was a murder or whether it was a monster movie about some plan of attack. But there's always these conversations. But, like, the best lives I can go on sometimes, I think sometimes, as much as I want to make money and I want to go on and do a good auction, people come to auctions because I think sometimes they want to hang out and they miss what we do. So there are actually some people that are voyeurs and watchers, or just reserved people that sit back. We're having a conversation because nobody's showing any activity, but we remind them once in a while, hey, everybody, throw up a bid. We call this thing called blind bid. If you don't know, just come to the Instagram community and watch some t-shirt shows. You'll learn. We're not going to define that for you. And you can have a conversation, and if nobody's doing business, what do? We
I
connect.
love those conversations because that's how I started learning about
Mm-hmm.
this niche.
Mm-hmm.
How specific it was. So all across different platforms wherever you sell, like
Yeah.
in Toronto, for example, vintage clothing, I've never had a person ask if there was a tag on something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And but any type of venue or alleyway, pathway you go about,
Here's
um
something nice. I'm assuming Hoover's, Craig's, and Coins. It says, from one lady to another, we got to support each other. What is her link? Hoover, Craig's, and Coin. If you go down below, she's not on YouTube as of yet. She may in the future take
I'm going
consideration.
to. I'm going
to make videos about like how to wash lace, or how to take care of a vintage sweater or whatever.
how to
She could
make
be
a
making.
coffee table out of
She's
flint.
very, yeah, she's very well learned, and she has a lot of more topics than vintage clothing. And I wouldn't invite you if I didn't think you were, uh, a good friend on YouTube. I mean, not YouTube, but Instagram. And now you are on YouTube. But I'm bringing you here because I think you have some mad knowledge to share with people. You're very charismatic, but also even though you're newer to the community, I know you have other ideas and subject matters that we haven't even touched upon this. I'm just
Yeah,
doing this as for some. Maybe you'll come back another day. We'll talk about this.
I'd love
But
to. Yeah,
we've been on for almost an hour and a half. So,
I
and
just want to say, like in general, thank you. By the way, thank you everyone for all your support and
yeah, check out her link down below. She's on Instagram.
Vintage Lair Shop. That's me. And then it says .ssg. I'll explain it.
Yeah, we don't have to go there. We're not going there tonight.
But no, I'm actually really considering YouTube because then people can't talk over me. Just talking to myself. No, I'm kidding. I just have so many
You won't
interests.
have Louis to go, wait a minute. Yeah.
I just have so many interests, and I love like do it yourself and collecting and selling and everything. Like I said,
I
my
think a
ideal
lot
store
of
would have all
YouTubers
these
would say you'd be fun to watch. You'd have to learn, but I would say take a focus and pick only 2 categories to start off with, and then when you're more comfortable with it, maybe add another one.
yeah,
And just,
that's me.
yeah.
I want all of it, and I want it now.
Are you here to? And my other question for you would be, and here's another question that is, so you're already in some ways, Savannah, you're already um, a content creator because you're creating content in the sense that you have an Instagram, and just because you put a picture up doesn't mean you're not creating content. It's content in terms of whether you're selling it or just showing it off, or saying this is a part of my collection, or this is something I like or want to do. That's what a YouTube person does too. We are content creators. So not that you want to be an influencer, but I think it can translate in a way where, like, here's a new thing to do if you're bored, but also if you have, I will say this much, as time consuming. My question for you is, are you wanting to be more of an entertainment form of YouTube, or do you want to be more of somebody that shares their knowledge and educate and and connects with the community?
Described me as a person like with both those in one. Like I'm serious about it.
You definitely are entertaining, not necessarily in a way that doesn't annoy me, but hey, it's all good. So
We're both talkers, so it's like.
so thanks for being here. I appreciate you, buddy.
Oh, thank you
Good.
so much.
Cool.
Yeah,
It was fun. I told you that, not to make it too stuffy, but we, I think people need to know that these are different types of resellers that are out there, but also I think talking more about a community can be like, oh, don't talk about this stuff. Well, it's no different than these guys that are like on Instagram and sitting around talking, whether it's late hours in the morning or early coffee and in the morning or whatever, or just a
I
random
know.
talk. What's that?
God.
What?
The exact it's there's this show on our in our community. It's Coffee and Jays in the morning,
Oh,
and
that's right.
like over 100
That's what
people
the
watch
Jays
it
mean.
every day. Coffee and
Oh, by
Jays.
the way, real quick, whoever says, she's like, okay, cool, but I wanted you to meet. This is Ella. She stayed here first. She's a big Instagrammer too. She does some dorky, funny, cool videos, and she does some educational stuff too. And by the way, Ella, I gotta thank you again. I am waiting to. I have the box. She sent me something, and I may be using it on Instagram now. She sent me a gift, and I will make a little short video saying thank you, my dear, and then show everybody what it is, because it's going to annoy the crap out of them, and I love her for it. So thank you, Ella, you're the best. And and if you don't know, whoever came in and everybody that's listening, and if you're watching this video, this thus far, this is my buddy. Let's give a pound here. This is Vintage Lair Shop on there. Yeah, that one. No, that one. There. And if you don't know, all right, that was enough dorkiness. But this is what we do on Instagram. We goof off, but then you and I. That's a funny thing. Whenever we're in a live, we can get so dorky. And then
It
all of a
is.
sudden it gets quiet and we talk serious. Like, no. This is what it's about. And we talk historically or whatever, you know.
We get
Thank you.
tangy, but then we get to the point, and then we're like, "Hey, wait, whoa!" Out of squirrel mode.
We got a compliment, so we got to say thank you to J-Mac. I appreciate you, J-Mac. It's good to see you, buddy. I appreciate you. If you haven't liked or subscribed, appreciate that. Hit the notification bell. I'm planning on having her return maybe once in a while, maybe as a guest host. And what I'm going to do is, and you know, bring on maybe when we have maybe once a month, we'll bring on a new person in the t-shirt community willing to share their knowledge like you did tonight. But also, I want to go ahead.
Thank you, J-Mac. I'm just gonna show the shirts. That's the rest
Yeah.
of it.
Talk about this. What is the tag brand on that? Which is the brand?
So this is what would be considered an art tee in our community. It has the artist's signature over here. Wow, this is even more difficult.
I know, TK.
Okay, Onita. Some people call it Juanita. Some people
I say
Onita.
Oneida. I've heard Oneida. Mm-hmm.
So this is prime quality, my friends.
I was gonna say that's in good. I've never seen such a clean tag unless you iron that sucker. You know.
I didn't. Oh yeah, I iron it. No, I steam it. I steam all of my clothing. They're always.
I'm too lazy for that.
Nope. They all hang. They do not fold. They are ready to go out in a package with a fresh steam.
Yeah. Rosilla, you better shake that out there. What does he say? Oh, it's funny. Oh, what's the story behind this? Would you call this a bootleg? Or is it an actual concert? What's that?
Sorry, bootleg or
No, I'm saying, is that a bootleg concert shirt?
No, this is a tribute shirt. It came out like a month or two before her 20th anniversary of her death. So that was about 2 months ago.
Okay.
So she was a musician, R&B music, and I personally
tragically died 20 years ago. Yeah.
She was on my Discman as a kid. I wanted to say one thing actually before. Yeah.
You're tragically dying.
I know it's funny seeing Louis Gnarly. You can't not mention that, eh?
I love it. Well, there's a buddy on. You know how I got this shirt? This is why I'm doing it. Is I'm gonna give him a shout out right now. Is his name is Marquise Daly. He has a YouTube channel too. And one day I was following. Guess what? Not his YouTube, but although I watch his videos, but I saw him on Instagram, and he does these. He's a nice guy you would like to watch. He's an entrepreneur. He has Airbnbs. He has a tour bus service, and he resells online. But he had these shirts one day, and he was showing them, and I'm like, I need those shirts. And he sent me a couple. You know, it's nice.
Yeah. By the way, let's take a pic of us pounding because I'm ready to go.
All right.
No, it didn't work. It didn't work. Okay. Oh, what I wanted to say. Okay, wait. Ready? Oh shoot.
There you go.
I did want to say something, and now I forgot.
Who said that?
It was important.
It was a brain fart, but it's late. We've been gone for an hour and a half. I want to say thank you for being on. We'll do this again, hopefully next time. What I'm trying to do with Tease Talk, this is volume 4. You guys like and subscribe. And if you don't know Miss Savannah, follow her in the link below on Instagram. She is entertaining and fun, and you'll see her on a lot of wild lives, and you'll get the idea of what we're talking about in terms of auctions.
I'm more team.
Oh, by the way, if you want Ella, hit her up under Vintage Lair Shop and the link below, and she'll give you that. So you guys talk in private on that later on that. But I'm going to end this. I'm going to end this now, and I want to say shout out to everybody that stood in here, and thank you.
That Gary, I'm keeping that aside for you. I'm ready to go on the kids stuff. I'm selling it on Poshmark already. So the Air Jordan, if you want it, buddy, there you go.
He may have left, but you can reach out to him on Instagram too.
Yeah, he said he has.
But I wanted to say thank you for Tino for sticking out this whole time. Look what he says. Was a fun show. Tino's really a great guy. He's out of California. Loved everybody. Peace and love. This has been Tease Talk as in t-shirts, and vintage was our topic tonight. This is Vintage Lair Shop. Thank you for being here. Peace out. Maintain your focus and elevate. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
We love ya.
All right.